Welcome to Balloonacy Boston's Big Ass Bow Tutorial. Here you'll see a list of materials that you'll need for this project. Make sure you have extra glue sticks and a pretty decent glue gun. The 99-cent store glue guns are great, but not for this project, my friends. Buckle up and let's go. Starting with our 2 yards of fabric, we're going to fold it lengthwise and then cut down the middle. Make sure you have very sharp scissors here because I'm working with satin and it frays very easily. So if you don't have specific fabric scissors, then the material will fray. But you can use any material that you want. So you want to lay it out with the pretty side down. Make sure you don't make the mistake that I did on my very first bow. Lay out your foam on top of that and make sure you have equal portions on either side. We're going to start off gluing down the top portion of the fabric over our foam. Here I'm using a heat sealer for a little bit of weight just to hold that down to make sure there's good adhesion. So whatever you have lying around that can stand for a weight is perfect. Now don't skimp with the glue here. You want to use as much as possible, so have plenty of extra glue sticks ready, but that's super important to make sure that the material is adhering to the foam, and the foam tends to suck up some of the glue, so you want to make sure you're using plenty. I'm working from left to right here so that we're building tension on the front of the foam. Don't pull too hard because you don't want too much tension where it's not pliable, but just enough so that it's still moving. Continue working your way down the foam, gluing everything securely. And then at the corners, I literally fold it like I am wrapping a gift. Fold your corners in and then over and then up, but whatever works out for you guys. You'll find once you figure this method out that you can kind of create it however you want to create it. You could use half the amount of foam, half the amount of material. You'll start to figure it out once you get the basic method down and kind of tailor it to your own needs. So here I'm showing how I'm folding in the corners just like a present, and I left myself a little shy here, but that's okay because this is going to be the back side inside of the bow. So perfection doesn't really matter at this stage. Now, at this point, what you're going to do is flip it over, make sure that everything looks great on the front side, and then you're going to be folding in either side to the middle equally. Here I'm just checking it out, flipping it over and folding in each side equally. I measured, you don't have to, but I measured just to make sure I had the correct center point. I also got my duct tape ready and have it on standby. Here I'm using a ton of glue to secure it in the middle and then weighing it down. And then I also put the glue on the exterior portion of the opposite side there to make sure I have contact at all sides. And then using some pressure, I couldn't find a pinky, so I had to use my blue pump, but it works just for the pressure. Now we're going to take the additional piece of fabric and we're going to cut it down the middle. These are going to be for our long ribbon tendrils, so cut those and put them aside. Now here I'm making sure that everything is secure. What you're going to do is flip it over to the front side and pinch directly in the middle, gathering that material up and then using your zip tie to get it nice and tight on the inside there. Nothing has to be perfect here. I started just primping a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect at this stage because we can always go back and fix it later. I'm taking my duct tape and laying it down, and then across I'm putting a zip tie in the correct way to zip it. Now here I'm just using the duct tape to wrap it around the middle to make sure that both sides are stuck together very well and putting it aside. Now we're going to move on to the long ribbon tendrils. take your next roll of foam and then measure out what you think would look nice at this point. You could go thicker, you could go thinner. You could not even do it in this fashion at all and just use loose material if you'd like. It's all up to your discretion for your desired look. So here I'm just laying out my pieces of foam and I'm taking out my 2 fabric sections to start the process all over again, just like we did with the large portion, the upper portion of the bow, just sealing in the fabric and making sure that it gets really good adhesion at this stage of the game. One thing that I did not do on this piece that I'm going to recommend that you do, I just forgot, was to cut the diagonal for the bottom portion of your ribbon tendril. So if you want to dovetail it, you can dovetail it. I just did a pretty slant, but whatever it is that you like for your desired look, I would do it before you start attaching all of your fabric together. So we're just moving along from left to right, adding weight to make sure that it's really stuck well, and just moving our way down. You'll notice that as we get closer to the end, I remembered right here, I did not cut it on the diagonal. So I just went back and did that, then cut off the excess fabric and continued on my way gluing and sealing those edges just like a gift, folding in the edges, making sure to glue along every step and cutting out the extra fabric as need be, because you definitely don't need a ton of it. You also do not need to cover the whole back portion of these ribbon tendrils with the fabric. I just did it on this one because I found that I like to kind of bend them to get movement into the tendrils so they don't just kind of lay floppy. I like to use my glue dashes or my U-glue strips to glue them up into a design. And yeah, so one of them I wanted to have a little extra fabric on the back, but it's definitely not necessary. One thing I noticed the first time I made this bow was that it would look gorgeous on a wall or over a crib, over a bed in a little girl's room as a Christmas tree topper bow. There's just so many uses for this, not just balloons, which happens to be my industry and what I was making and creating these for. But here we go again along with the process. So a little backstory, my mom made bows my whole life. She taught me at a very young age how to make bows. So I've been making them and doing them and incorporating them in my designs for years now. But they just really started to get popular. So I wanted to kind of share the design with everybody so they could start incorporating them. And yeah, so there's that. So I'm just finishing up here, and what we're going to do at this stage is gather both of the tops of the tendrils together, and we're going to fold them in half and then in half again to make little holes, because we're going to weave a zip tie through them in order to attach them to the back of our bows. Okay, so there I am, folding them in half and then in half again so that you can cut a hole for your zip ties to go through. You're going to do the same on both pieces. And then at this stage, I put it aside because I'm going to work on the middle piece for our bow. Just take a small piece of your foam and cut a small piece of fabric to match. Do the same steps with gluing the fabric down and over so that it's perfect on the front side. The back side, it doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to glue that directly on your bow. Now make sure you're using a ton of glue when you attach it here. In a perfect world, I would have used hot glue and E6000 along with some clamps. However, I wanted to speed up the process for you guys. But hot glue is good enough. Just make sure you're using enough. Now I pinch it together and then flip it over and use the hot glue again. In a perfect world, I would have used clamps here, but I used a little bit of duct tape just to make sure that the glue had dried and was holding properly. So this is where I'm taking the initial zip tie and tying it tight, and then using the zip tie on the top of the tendrils to attach it all together. I'll take my third zip tie at this point to create an attachment point. So if you want to use it on the wall or balloons or however you're going to do it, you have that attachment point. I just used a little extra piece of fabric to button up the ugly duct tape, flipped it over, and here's where you come into your primping and perfecting. You can adjust your shape. I'm standing on the table here so I can get my camera back, and there we are, friends. Enjoy.